Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert. On this channel, we talk Kanye West, and today we're talking Ye responding to people's response to the EAZY music video. I think at this point you're kind of well aware of the music video, but in case you're not, in the EAZY video, we see this claymation story take place where Ye gets saved from this sunken place by the game and EAZY. He's like down in this well, gets freed. He goes through the desert on his bike and ends up kidnapping Pete Davidson and then burying this claymation figure of Pete in the dirt, the sand, and growing roses around Pete. And then at the end of the video, he comes and like picks roses, and we see him put them in the back of a truck and drive off. And this ties into how on Valentine's Day, Ye actually delivered a truck full of roses to Kim's house. So what seemed like a romantic gesture at the time is now kind of made into something that's a little more sarcastic, a little more biting and mocking, which you can imagine, especially after reading Ye's post, why that is. Okay, so he says, art is therapy, just like this view. And the view is the childhood Chicago home on fire, the visual that we got from the Donda 2 listening party in Miami. Art is protected as freedom of speech. Art inspires and simplifies the world. Art is not a proxy for any ill or harm. Any suggestion otherwise about my art is false and malintended. So when he talks about art is therapy, you can imagine if he sent the flowers to Kim meaningfully, right? Like he really was sending these flowers, hoping it was going to be this like big gesture, and then it wasn't anything. There's something very symbolic about him like growing these flowers from Pete, putting them in the truck and sending them off. It becomes like a bitter thing at this point when it was initially very earnest. It's like through art, he's working through kind of what that gesture meant at the time, kind of some of the anger that he probably has with himself at this point with that gesture. Maybe this is me like thinking through the situation and trying to read what Kanye is doing. But like from this video, you can get a sense of bitterness, right? Like he's working through some of the frustrations he has of like the Kim and Pete relationship and where it's at, especially with this video having callbacks to like Bound 2 specifically. When Ye's on this motorcycle in the desert, like driving around, it's reminiscent of one of the iconic scenes from the Bound 2 music video, which is Ye and Kim Kardashian on the bike, and they're heading to the left side of the screen. And here he's coming back on the right side of the screen, like facing the right side of the screen alone. So it's like they went off in one direction together, and now he's coming back alone. So you have this symbolism of like the relationship, the loss of the relationship, there's frustrations with Pete that are all coming through, this tie together to February 14th with the flowers in the truck. And it's just Ye saying like, this was therapy. Like, yeah, it's intense, but it's not actually like any harm intended. Like there's nothing more serious going on than me just kind of working through these emotions. Just saying it inspires and simplifies the world, right? This is something that we talk about on our movie analysis websites, Film Colossus, where we explain movie endings and movie themes in like great detail, like way too much detail. And we often talk about defamiliarization. It's one of Travis and mine's favorite words, and we've mentioned it on the lyrical analysis portions of the podcast a lot. This idea that you take something that could be done in a realistic way and you dramatize it. You blow it up to the surreal, the sci-fi, the fantastic. One of my favorite examples is this movie called Babadook, a horror movie that came out, when was it, like 2014, I think it was. And in Babadook, you have this mom and her son. The husband died in a car accident the night the kid was born, and the mom's still really upset about it. And in her grief, it kind of like brings about this monster called the Babadook that starts haunting the family and consumes the mom and takes her over and like starts trying to attack her own child because she has these like frustrations. And what that movie really is getting at is in the aftermath of loss. Like, right, if this movie was going to be done in a grounded way, it's just that a mom or a wife loses her husband, but gives birth to their son and is despondent every time she sees her child because it's reminding her of her husband, and she just goes into a depression, right? So in the realistic version of that story, she's just depressed and sad and maybe stops being a good caregiver. And there's this like conflict as the son tries to like get his mom to like have a breakthrough, deal with her grief, right? And start being like a mom, start being presence. That's the realistic story, right? But in the dramatized, defamiliarized version of that story, the depression is represented through this monster that literally takes control of the mom and that the son has to battle. That's what defamiliarization is. So it's like here in this music video, like, is Ye really going to like bury Pete's and hurt Pete's? No, but he's just like simplifying his emotions and dramatizing his emotions in a way that is shocking, that is like off-putting, especially to some people, but it's getting at like his feelings, his vibe, like whatever he's going through, and helping him work through it, put it out there, and hopefully move on. That's ultimately the purpose of why we create art. Yes, there's entertainment, and yes, you can create art for money, but then at that point, is it really art rather than a product and entertainment? When you're creating art, it's usually coming from a place, from this like core thing that you have to express, that you're like working through and need to get through, because otherwise it's all you can think about. So yeah, we have this article here from the Los Angeles Times to kind of summarize, and then we actually have Pete Davidson's response, which is kind of interesting to get into. So here, the Los Angeles Times article, and this is what Ye is essentially responding to and why he made this post. So this article goes, Christy Karras, a number of social media users are disturbed by Kanye West and the Game's new claymation music video for EAZY, which depicts West kidnapping, burying, and decapitating a clay figurine in the likeness of Saturday Night Live star Pete Davidson. Just to clarify, and I appreciate the Los Angeles Times because I do think that it's one of the more reputable outlets, right? But this is one of those things, at no point in the video do we see anything involving like the D word there, right? I don't know how YouTube's going to be about that, but you see Ye carrying in like the real world, right? And we talked about this in the overview. You have the reality based parts of this music video where it's really Ye, it's really the Game at times, like sitting on this casket, right? So you have this idea of reality, and then you have this idea of fantasy that kind of comes through. And in the fantasy world, Pete's tied up and buried, and then the flowers are cut. You never see anything more happen to him that's more violent. And then in the real world, Ye's carrying this like fake head, but it doesn't look anything like Pete, and you never see where the head arrives from. Of course, you can infer that it was like, you know, but it's never actually shown. And the fact that it's not actually Pete's head, yeah. So I don't know if it's actually like the appropriate word for what happens in the music video, but there is an implication of it. So I guess it just depends on how pedantic you want to be, and I am very pedantic. So a clay figurine in a likeness, yeah. So he doesn't do that to the clay figurine. So released Wednesday, the violent visual is West's latest attack on Davidson, says the comedian began dating the rapper's estranged wife, reality TV star Kim Kardashian. In the EAZY video, a clay version of West, who changed his legal name to Ye, you always have to get that in these articles now. It's almost like Jesus Walks rapper, or the, you know, No Child Left Behind rapper. There's always this kind of M-dashed set off of who changed his legal name to Ye, or formerly known as Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, abducts a clay figurine of Davidson before burying it in the ground and holding its severed head. Yeah, that's not what happens in the clay version either. So, I mean, it's just one of those, like, I have no doubt that Christie's like a very good journalist, right? But this is not an accurate representation of what happens in the video, which is like very problematic to me. As somebody that just cares about specifics, I think that's an issue. And then it goes into, we having the best divorce ever. If we go to court, we'll go to court together. Ye raps on the track, which repeatedly references his turbulent divorce with Kardashian, the mother of their 4 young children. On Wednesday, did they already say that? Okay. On Wednesday, a judge declared Kardashian legally single, and the beauty mogul officially dropped West from her last name. Rich A kids, this ain't your mama's house, climb on your brother's shoulders, yeah. The controversial video comes on the heels of Ye being accused of harassing Kardashian online, along with her telling an LA court that her former partner's social media posts have caused her emotional distress. Not long after the video came out, Twitter users condemned Ye for taking his public disdain for Davidson too far. Some even interpreted the claymation slaying as a serious threat against the actor, deeming the visual weird and scary on so many levels. So this is what like Ye's saying. Art is not a proxy for any ill or harm. Like, I'm not actually like going to do these things. It's an exaggeration of what I'm feeling. It's an exaggeration of maybe what I'd like to do. You know, this is over the top and excessive, but it's not like, it's getting at the truth, but it's not the truth, right? Any suggestion otherwise about my art is false and malintended, which I could see like a cynical person being like, well, of course you say that, right? It covers your bases. It's the same thing as a comedian saying, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Don't be so offended. And it's like, jokes can have consequences. Not every joke is okay just because it was intended as a joke, right? I'm somebody that believes that very much, especially when you start getting into some of the like political commentary. Not to like go off on a tangent, but like while I believe like there is and should be a freedom to art and the exploration within art, I do think there are things where it's just like, well, that's problematic. And I get why somebody would be cynical about this. But at the same time, I also feel like Ye has never done anything to like a person, right? And yet we also have plenty of instances of artists doing like Tupac with Hit 'Em Up, Eminem's entire like 1999 to 2005 body of work. And that's not to say that it's okay then anybody can get away with anything. It's just that it seems that there has been a whipped up frenzy around Ye, and that people might be taking some of what he does a little too literally, a little too seriously, without necessarily understanding who he is, where he's coming from, and that he doesn't, like, he talks a lot, right? And he says things that people don't always agree with, but he never really does anything that's like bad. And yet you have people like comparing him to OJ. You have people comparing him to R. Kelly. It's excessive and not helpful to the conversation. And you're going to see some of these like extreme takes. I think they're extreme takes. I'm not saying that there's no criticism that's valid here, especially in the idea that posting like too much about Kim when Kim's trying to move on, posting too much about Pete when like, I do get why people have been critical of some of the like repeated comments that Ye has made. I understand that, but I think some of the response to what he has done is just so over the top, especially like the OJ comparisons, right? Like there has to be a middle ground here. That's not just like he's OJ 2.0 or he's completely valid and innocent and can do anything that he wants. Like middle grounds exist. I love middle grounds, and yet we don't use them much these days. So here, okay. If I were Pete, I would get a restraining order on Ye ASAP, tweeted writer Meacham Whitson Merriweather. It's been weird, but this is a whole new level. Like imagine doing all this because you're upset about a PR relationship. All this violence for Pete shows that Kanye never viewed Kim as a human being but property, which also feels like very excessive of just like somebody being upset that their like marriage ended and that like this person that they're dating. And I think that's the other like storyline here is not just that she's dating someone new. She's dating Pete, who had been critical of Ye publicly on SNL. And there's the whole debate of like, well, you know, what Pete said was more valid and, you know, he was on SNL and it was jokes, so it's okay. Some people view what Ye was doing as art, and that's okay and not as big of a deal, right? What I was saying earlier, it's just a joke, it's just art. There are lines, and sometimes for some people, you see the music video and you're like, that's not art, that's over the line. But some people see what Pete said on SNL and be like, that wasn't a joke. That was like personal, and that was an attack on Ye, and some would think that's over the line. It really depends, and it's what makes this conversation really difficult sometimes because people just have very different ideas of where the line is for what is art and what is a joke and what's a valid thing to say and what's an invalid way of expressing yourself. Okay. But yeah, being property, I think because Pete had been so publicly critical of Ye on SNL, that there's something to Ye having an extra like gear when it comes to Pete being the person that Kim's dated. Especially like people have been pointing out some of like the jokes that Pete has made in his comedy that were like very dark comedy, very transgressive, and being like, well, would you be comfortable if somebody who made that joke was going to be around your kids? There also have been things with Pete having had a prior friendship with Ye and Kim. So it's always more complicated when your ex dates somebody that you knew, right? Like if your ex goes and dates a stranger, that's one thing. If your ex goes and dates one of your coworkers, that's something different. If they date one of your family members, that's something different. There's just extra baggage when they date somebody that you already knew, had encounters with, had hung out with as a couple. So it's just a little more complicated that it's Pete's. I don't know if Ye would be like this if Kim just started dating like random Canadian philanthropist 3, right? If she's doing that, I don't know if Ye does anything like this. Still, some defended Ye's vision and praised the video as an innovative work, but I don't think he thought of her as property. Innovative work of art in recent weeks. Ye also has targeted Kardashian and Davidson in multiple since-deleted Instagram posts, dismissively referring to the comic as skeets. No explanation of that. At the end of the EAZY video title card reads, "Everyone lived happily ever after, except you know who, with skeet crossed out. Just kidding, he's fine." Kanye dropped the EAZY video on the day of his divorce is beautiful, tweeted Majesty Rhea. "As dark as it is, it's beautiful. He's an artist expressing his grief. If Skeet can go on SNL and make a mockery of a man, he can become the joke as well. Art is subjective. It's okay if you don't like it." Which is the middle ground, right? Like, that's the middle ground perspective I was talking about. I mean, it's leaning a little more Ye than a little more like Pete, but it's still a very middle ground perspective. Like, it's art. If you don't like it, it's subjective. That's okay. But like, you know, Pete has done things, etc., etc. Others, however, criticize Ye's supporters for defending and excusing this disgusting behavior, while pointing out a double standard regarding how the heartless hitmaker's work has been received compared to that of his female and LGBTQ contemporaries. More people were offended by Lil Nas X wearing a skirt and Cardi singing about her WAP than there are about this, tweeted the Titan baddie. That's wild to me. I mean, but this has been such a huge social media. I mean, no, how do I want to even... More people were offended by Lil Nas. I feel like a lot of people were offended by the Ye music video. So I don't know if that's like... But more people were offended by the Lil Nas X wearing a skirt and Cardi singing, because it's just like, in general, transgressive. I mean, somebody pointed out already that that there's, from conservative America, or like traditional values America, there's already an expectation of like violence in hip hop, right? Especially coming out of the 90s and everything with Tupac and Biggie and even Jay-Z and Nas, right? There was this violence that was glorified that a lot of the like traditional values America pushed back against, trying to ban rap music and hip hop music and take it off the airwaves. And we're at a point now where they don't really care in the same way. So I think there's something with like the music video where it's just like, well, you know, that's just something in hip hop, where you have people being like Lil Nas X wearing a skirt, especially with the ubiquity of Old Town Road and how that was such a popular song for like all ages. They're like grade school singing Old Town Road and doing these things with Old Town Road. Like Lil Nas X became a star for, or like had fans of all ages. So for him to go from Old Town Road to wearing this like skirts and grinding on Satan and all the music video stuff that he did, there's such a political battle right now with the traditional values America and like that kind of content specifically, that it doesn't shock me that more people were freaking out at that. Or same thing with like Cardi. I also feel like Cardi's music video, it's just that song's way more popular. And that's the other thing, like the Lil Nas X song and the Cardi song, we're getting like mainstream airwaves play, mainstream music video play, and attention and marketing, where like Ye doesn't quite get that mainstream like MTV premiere of a music video kind of thing these days. So it's just like, it's part of the conversation, but it's not part of the like larger mainstream conversation the way that some of those things were, just given the overall popularity of Lil Nas X and Cardi at this point. I don't know why I talked so long about that point in general. It was just fascinating for me. Thanks for bearing with me. You know, you're a real one. And then here, user Soberpunk tweeted, people defending Kanye's music video for EAZY because it's creative or arts have clearly never experienced an abusive relationship, and it shows. This isn't funny anymore. It's disturbant. He needs to leave Kim alone and stop harassing her. And it's one of those things. There is probably something to be said in that vein of thoughts that's appropriate, but I also think that it's too extreme of a take on the topic. Like, it is still creative and it still is art, but it would also be something that like Kim seeing that and just being like, oh my goodness, like when will this stop? You can imagine that it's like intense for her. Which like, yeah. Anyway, see more. I started to go into like, whoa, but you could imagine how intense like these articles and headline, but there's such like equivalency, like attempted equivalency there, that it felt like, why even have that conversation or try to force that conversation? This is what it is, right? Regardless of like the reasons why or what's going on, it still is intense for Kim. So then see more reactions, and it just gets into this list of reactions. What's interesting is that we have this Pete Davidson thinks Kanye West character of him in EAZY music video is hysterical, source says. This is coming on Entertainment Online. I feel like Entertainment Online, probably much like whatchamacallit, what's the TMZ, has some like close ties to Kim. So that some of these like stories that they get are kind of like, as Ye said, as oh my god, I'm blanking on, oh no, Jason Lee, as Jason Lee was saying, that you have like Kim's PR people like putting out these stories for a point. This one seems like one of those maneuvers, right? Pete Davidson thinks Ye's Kanye West character of him in EAZY is hysterical. So you can see like the reverse psychology that's kind of going on with how this story is framed. So it's Pete Davidson is focusing on his relationship, not his girlfriend's ex. A source tells ET that the 28-year-old SNL star takes Ye's social media posts, lyrics, and music videos about him with a grain of salt. So it's like, if Ye's trying to get a rise out of Pete, it's not doing anything. This is a declaration that it's not affecting him. The update comes weeks after Kanye released a new song, EAZY, in which he raps that he wants to beat Pete Davidson's ass. The music video followed shortly thereafter, not shortly, like a month, and featured Kanye kidnapping and burying a claymation figure that resembled the comedian. There we go. That's an accurate description. He finds the fact that Kanye included a cartoon version of him in his music video hysterical. ET's source says of Pete, he is almost flattered by it all because it is so ridiculous to him. That reverse psychology, right? Like the emotional judo. You're trying to like upset me, which I don't think Ye is necessarily trying to do. He's just working through his own like grief of the situation and like coming to terms with everything. And is doing so in, you know, a little bit of a harassing manner to Pete and to Kim. But you have this essentially saying like, it's not bothering me. Like, it's hysterical. You're flattering me. I'm so touched that you would do this and give me the time of day. It's that kind of like, I'm so unbothered by this that you think that it would make the other person like not interested in engaging with you anymore, right? It's that de-escalation of the situation through this positivity. He's kind of Ted Lassoing the situation, or that's what this article wants you to think. The source adds that Pete is not threatened by Kanye in any way, shape, or form. He's using this to grow in more ways than one, including for himself and his relationship with Kim. He's turning all of the negativity into a positive thing. And that's like the ultimate point, right? Like, oh, everything that Ye's been doing that like might upset like Pete and upset Kim is only making them stronger and bringing them closer together, which is also kind of this like judo maneuver. Like, there's no point in continuing to do this because you see it's only having the opposite effect of whatever you hope that it's doing. Pete is so understanding and has made an extreme effort to put any of his emotions aside and just be a support system for Kim during this difficult time and transition. Pete has grown so much as an adult, man, public figure, and partner through this process, even though he has unexpectedly been thrown in the middle of things, including Kanye's rants and the publicity that followed. In turn, the source says Kim could not be more appreciative of Pete, right? So this just reads like, see, you're not accomplishing anything. They're growing astronomically as a result. This has been more of a positive growing experience for them, contrary to the negativity that surrounds the situation. As for Kanye, the source says the rapper's goal is to break Kim and Pete up, and everyone sees that, including Kim and Pete. Kanye will never accept that she wants to fully separate herself from him, except there was just the report that he told his lawyer that he wants the divorce to like be finalized and to stop fighting everything. And that's why they talk about how she was just declared legally single in court. That was something that it seemed Ye was prepared to fight in court, and then suddenly had a change of heart and was just like, no, let everything go through. So if like what he's trying to do is like not let her do that, then why suddenly let her do that, you know? According to the source, the legal victory also left Kim feeling empowered and like she's one step closer to being done with this divorce. That's the other thing. The divorce isn't finished. Just because Kim was declared legally single, that was part of the process because Ye wasn't finalizing the divorce. So it's kind of like the divorce isn't finalized. It's still going to take a while, but at least declare me legally single so I can do all of these other things that I wasn't necessarily allowed to do because I was still technically legally a married woman. So the divorce is still in the process of finalizing, I don't know what aspects, but it's not over yet. But it was a step in that direction. She just wants to close this chapter. When it comes to Kim and Kanye's kids, ET source says they're doing well. Kim is such a hands-on mom. She has always done her best to protect her kids from any negativity in general, including the social media backlash, the public's attention, and more. It has been a learning curve, but she feels like she has done a great job of protecting them from anything that could affect them emotionally as they evolve and grow up. She wants them anything that could affect them emotionally. I like that. This is one of those things that sounds like it's very PR-y, right? Like she's done a great job protecting them from anything that could affect them emotionally. But that's not like a bad thing, right? If you see a movie that you love, that's affecting you emotionally. If you're seeing like you're eating ice cream and it's wonderful, that's affecting you emotionally. Like being affected emotionally is not inherently a bad thing. I get what they mean. Like the implication, what they're saying is that anything that could negatively affect them, she's protected them from that. But what it sounds like, or what it literally says, is that she is making sure that they have no emotions whatsoever. And that's been her goal. She's protecting them from ever feeling anything good or bad, just staying like perfectly neutral throughout their lives. Did I mention I'm pedantic? She wants them to lead the most normal lives possible. The source adds that Kim is not worried about custody issues, but she is worried about the image Kanye publicly paints of her and, by extension, their children. As such, the source says Kim's intention is to keep things as cordial as possible with Kanye. What is most frustrating to her is that she has no control of his actions or what he says publicly. I mean, you don't know. That has continually been an ongoing struggle, but again, her hope is to move past that and keep her and her family matters as private as possible. Except all of this, like, it wants to stay as private as possible, but this is like a planted story, and there are all these planted stories all the time that aren't keeping things private. There's just like a little bit of an irony to it. And like on the one hand, it does control the narrative and helps like not let other people control what's being said and how it's being said, but it's just funny. And I guess it is says like as private as possible. So it's like when you have to leak a few things to just like maintain order, you do. but it's also like we do leak things to maintain order and to like get stories in there that make us like say what we want people to think. Anyway, that's what Ye's responding to, is essentially all of this, like all the drama of it, and it's just like, yo, I'm just like expressing something that I'm going through. There's nothing more to that. There's no like danger. There's no threat. Like to suggest anything more than that is just like false. And you're just trying to say things because you dislike me. So that's where we're at with things. I did expect this video to be 30 minutes, especially because I did not want to talk that much. But clearly I wanted to talk a lot, and I did. Anyway, that's it. Until next time, stay wavy and keep it loopy. Cheers.